Hello everyone, it's Dr. Rafael Gutierrez, and today I am going to talk about something that I came across a few times, and that is people talking about the pretty much the change of man, or how men have changed, or how men should be or shouldn't be. And it actually, as I kept on looking at stuff, a lot of the stuff that people kept on mentioning is the decreases in testosterone levels in men. And that's actually something pretty easy to address. So you need maybe 5-10 minutes to actually go through everything. And what we actually find is what causes low testosterone in men is usually pretty much has to do with does have to do with physical fitness. So, for instance, a lot of times it has to do with medications. For instance, they actually have found that opioid use decreases testosterone levels. So, if you're a person who takes a lot of opioids, namely for recreational use, chances are your testosterone levels will go down. Another one that they find is pretty common is obesity. If you're morbidly obese, I actually was at one point, if you've seen some of the old videos, heavy, I actually did fall into the morbidly obese category. Your testosterone can actually drop because of being morbidly obese. I never had that issue, but it is something that can happen. Another thing that they've actually found really does affect testosterone levels is type 2 diabetes when it's uncontrolled. If you have type 2 diabetes and you're not controlling it, yes, your testosterone levels can end up dropping. They have found that sleep apnea is also linked to lower testosterone levels, and there's a lot of the other causes are other things that some of them are things that you can control, some of them are things that you cannot. For instance, they have found that alcohol abuse tends to actually decrease testosterone levels. Liver issues also decrease it. Any inflammatory disease can, and that's something that you really need to treat with a medical doctor. And they also found that previously using anabolic steroids will decrease the levels of testosterone. And all these make perfect sense. Now, there are some things that people don't really pay attention to. For instance, having too much iron actually can drop testosterone levels. And a lot of people think, oh, I need more iron in my diet to be an Iron Man. But what we find is in men, in humans, people who are not menstruating, there's not a drop in iron levels because you're not bleeding. And so the amount of iron you need is minimal. You get it from diet. You don't have to worry about pills. Head trauma is another thing that, again, it can cause lower levels of testosterone. But one of the things that I would tell you is if you're worried about testosterone levels, doctors do not just use symptoms. Signs and symptoms are a big thing. And usually when someone has a lot of experience in it, they can end up pretty much saying, well, probably has this. But the definition, the diagnosis of low testosterone levels is really done through blood work. So if we're talking about decreased testosterone levels, these are actually pretty easy things to fix. If you're morbidly obese, it really means get on a physical exercise routine, get on a better diet so you will not be morbidly obese. If you have type 2 diabetes, get treated for it so it decreases your chances of lower testosterone. If you're abusing alcohol, get treatment. Make sure you actually aren't abusing it. If you have any other issues, medical issues that are causing it, such as a pituitary tumor, or head trauma, or infections, get checked to see what you need to actually fix the underlying cause. But most of the things are pretty easy. Like I said, in about, 3-4 minutes, I was able to tell you the basics of low testosterone. Now, usually though, when people are talking about low testosterone, they're talking about, well, what is a man's man type of deal. Never understood that whole idea. And because first of all, nobody actually has ever really defined it really well, especially the people who use this as a man's man. And so I actually decided I would actually look at people who have just looked at the ideal person, not just man, but person. And there are two philosophers that I found actually come out with the best explanations of an ideal person. One of them is Confucius, and as martial artists, we should be reading some Confucianism, because sometimes katas, sometimes ideas, they are actually linked to the ideas of Confucianism. If you actually read some of the old karate texts, and I'm pointing there because that's where I have my library, a lot of them actually have Confucius ideals in it. They also have Buddha and a lot of different ideas. But the Confucius ideas actually do penetrate. And the ideal man was actually at one point someone who should have studied martial arts for the benefit of society. And if you read Choshin Nagamine, you actually may actually recognize that saying, benefit of society is what a lot of people should be taking martial arts for. Now, Confucianism has actually a couple different things on what makes a ideal man. One of them was compassion, how they treat others. The other was having the proper way to do stuff. I'm actually looking at my notes because I can't remember everything that Confucius said. And that has to do with society and making sure there's a harmony, reverence to family, making sure your family feels respected, your old seniors are respected. There's actually something called the doctrine of the middle road. This is one of the other important things. What it says is if there are two sides, one's on the right, one's on the left, you should actually strive to be somewhere in the middle, because that way you have leeway to make a little bit of mistakes one way or another. The other thing he actually mentioned was integrity and faithfulness and honesty. Someone should be honest. And again, all these things are actually based on the benefit of society. He then actually talked about having wisdom, practical wisdom, and how to get it. And he actually said that there are three ways to get wisdom. One of them is by imitation, one of them is by thinking and studying, one of them is by imitation, and the third is by experience. And he actually says that the experience one is the one that's most bitter, but the one that you learn most. The imitation is the pondering, the thinking about it, and reading about it is the easiest. But one of the things that I've noticed is experience tends to be one of those things that really does tend to get the knowledge in better. I will actually say one of the things I've actually realized with my experiences is the more I live life, the more mistakes I make, the more I realize that there's a lot more I need to learn on every subject. It is a humbling thing when you actually find out you're wrong through experience. But it is actually a good thing to be able to find out when you are wrong. And the idea of getting information, the idea of getting knowledge from experience, really, there's no other way to get it but that. Now, the other person that I've actually noticed wrote about a ideal person is Nietzsche. Now, a lot of his writings were actually corrupted by other people. And so I try to go back to his original idea of the Uberman or the Superman. And he actually says that there are three different things that happen to become a ideal person. And he actually talks about the camel who is following the rules strictly. It doesn't matter how bad things go for him. He's following society's rule. The second is the lion, who is a rebel. He's going to rebel if the rules say one thing, they fight for it, not necessarily because of the fact that they're necessarily agree or disagree, but rather if there's a rule, you must break it. And finally, he talks about being the child, and the child being the one who makes their own rules. He realizes that there is, in many ways, this child is the person who realizes that civilization is limited. There's a lot of different things that he actually ends up mentioning in his work, but the idea is this is all you have. Your life is what you have, and so you have to find the best way to live it. It's not necessarily following all the rules or rebelling against stuff, but rather learning how to make your own rules. On top of that, he actually ends up making a big point in a lot of his writings where it has to deal with you make your own rules for yourself, and if you break the rule, you break the rule because of the idea that it disagrees with what you now believe. You change your idea. And that's okay, but to break your rule for an outside benefit, for someone to agree with you, that tends to be something that is not a good thing. Actually, I do watch some anime, and I will mention, if you ever watch the Full Metal Alchemist Blood Brothers, there's a part where envy has always been, I think it's envy, I can't remember. Has always been, well, one of them is always, one one of them, I can't remember, the little kid one is always angry at humanity, always hates humanity, wants nothing to do with it. And yet, at the end, he tries to take the idea of humanity, and he was stopped by another villain who says, no, you can't go to that. If you believe this, you can't just decide, oh, I'm going to change this because it's beneficial. You have to stand on your beliefs. But the one thing that Nietzsche actually says is your beliefs are actually your guideline. And there were a lot of interesting things that I actually found with them. For instance, the real man, the real person, the real human, the ultra Uberman, as he called it, does not follow or conform to society's norms, but follows his sense of morality or his ideas of ideal. He must question what it is. He has to come. He can't be a conformist to society. The Uberman has to find himself. He has to find his own meaning of what is happening. And he actually says that these individuals will make up their own will. They'll make up their own values, but they won't resent other people. They won't actually try to enforce their values and beliefs onto another person. They actually will live life and love life by this. And that's actually one of the important things. Now, as I actually looked at this, I saw that both the Ubermans and the ideal man actually do merge into an idea of a good person. And you think about it. You may have your own beliefs. You may have the things that you work well for your worldview. But to actually try to enforce your worldview onto someone else, it really isn't something that is beneficial to anyone. Helping other people is beneficial. For instance, if your worldview is, well, I'm going to help other people see how to do something, and that's all you're trying to do, well, that's a good thing. But if you're saying, well, I'm going to force people to do this because it's for their benefit, well, there you have actually issues with the whole idea of a Superman. Why should you, as an ideal person, force your concepts of morality onto someone else, as long as no one else is getting hurt? For instance, if two people want to wear purple and you think people should all wear green, well, why should my idea of everyone should wear green interfere with someone's idea of they want to wear purple? It doesn't affect me one way or another, so why should it matter? Now, if it was something that was hurting someone, that would be something else. So I guess if we're actually going to be trying to talk about becoming the real human being, the ideal human being, we actually do have to work on the idea of, is what I'm trying to force someone else to do going to hurt anyone? And is it going to hurt who's not a willing participant? If it's only going to hurt people who are interested, for instance, if two people want to get together and punch each other in the face for 5 minutes, if it's not going to hurt anyone but them, well, let them punch each other in the face for as long as you want. If one person wants to hit someone else, well, that's where you have a little difference. And that's about it actually does deal with the idea of society and your own morality. Now, as I said that, I actually did start looking at what we consider ideal people, either in reality or in mythology or in religion. And I actually found a couple people who actually did become culture heroes. And rather than tell you their stories, I would actually tell you to read up on some of these heroes, see why they are heroes, and when they really become the ultimate person. And the people I would actually tell you to look at, the culture heroes I would actually mention, is Odysseus, Gilgamesh, and there's a couple of Asian mythology which are pretty interesting to look at. But I actually want to tell you to look at the ideas that came out of, if you're religious, your religious authorities' work. So for instance, if you're Christian, I don't mean look at what the person in church is taught you, but go and read what Jesus originally told people to do, how he told people to live. And maybe by actually starting with the basics of emulating people you actually would like to be like, be it true or fictional people, it may actually help us get to the point of being better people, ultra people, ideal people, let's say. I hope you enjoyed this and have a nice day.